too long.
Okay, to kick it off, once again, my name is Brad Bateman. This is Jessica Fields. We are real estate agents at Compass here in Brooklyn, but Jessica started the Beyond Brooklyn brand about 8 years ago to help educate people on their options outside of Brooklyn, outside of the city. We have some fantastic people here joining us today, wonderful agents from across the different suburbs who are going to be able to explain a little bit about their area, about their community, about the culture, the commute, the vibe, the market situation there, and what you need to do to put yourself in a good position to win yourself a listing, to win yourself a house. Jessica, you want to start it off?
Yeah, well, so first I'm going to introduce our panelists so that they can all pop up and you can see what they look like. And then we're going to kind of go area by area so that you can learn a little bit more about each of their communities. So first off, I want to introduce Ginge Calhoun. She is in Essex County, New Jersey, and covers more than just Essex County. But why don't you say hi, Ginge?
Hi, everyone.
Next, I want to introduce Alana Benjamin. She is in Long Island, and she is going to talk about Port Washington and other communities around that area. Those are popular destinations.
Hi, guys. It's Alana. Nice to see everybody.
And last but certainly not least, we have Maya and Corey in Westchester County, and they cover a really huge area. So we're going to try and touch on a bunch of Westchester County. So why don't you say hi, guys?
Hi. Hi, Maya.
Excellent. Well, so, first things first, we want to kind of go through community by community and talk about the things that we know are important to people. We already have a question in the chat about commute. That is certainly a big deal. We want to start with New Jersey and talk a little bit about what the community is like there, what makes it special, why people choose to move to New Jersey over other communities. But first, maybe, Ginge, can you give us a little bit of a bio on you and how you ended up in New Jersey and what you think is special about New Jersey?
Yes, for sure. Hi, so I'm Ginge. You will gather quite quickly. I was born in England, moved out to the States about 14 years ago, and I did LA. I did live on the Upper East Side for a couple of years before moving to New Jersey. I definitely did not have New Jersey on my mind. My husband mentioned it. I said, no way. We came out, we got the train, we got off in Maplewood, fell in love, looked at 5 houses, bought one. And that was that. And been really in love with Maplewood, the surrounding towns, really since then. I've been working with Alison Ziefert for the last 6 years, and we have a great team. We do cover, as Jess mentioned, we cover Essex, Morris, and Union counties. So popular towns that a lot of people come to us for are Summit, Milburn, Short Hills, Madison, Chatham, Montclair, Glenridge, South Orange, Maplewood. So that's kind of a bit of background on me. And then, Jessica, you want me to kind of dive into what makes us special, hopefully?
Yes. What differentiates your community from the other areas? I mean, a lot of the suburbs have the leafy green feel, but what would you say is different about your neighborhood?
We definitely don't have Alana's sunsets. I will start with that because I know she's going to bring that up. I would say what makes Northern New Jersey kind of stand out, a big part of it is the commute. So a lot of our clients move. We do have direct train into Penn Station, has its own special exit on 31st and 7th. And you can get from some of these towns around 45 minutes. Summit, Montclair, you might hit more kind of 55 door to door on the train. We also really cater for commuters. So we have in a lot of the towns, it's a jitney. So I call it like a school bus for grownups. And it goes around the different neighborhoods and takes you to the train station. So you don't have to be within walking distance to a train station. You don't have to get a permit to park. So that's a really nice option for people too. And then, a lot of our houses can also be walkable to train. So the train is one thing. I know commutes come up, so I'll touch on that a little bit more. We also have people get the path. Some people also get the ferry, which is a lovely way to travel, not on a day like today, but I'm sure in the summer it's beautiful. So I think that the commute piece is a pretty simple piece that draws people to our towns. We're also really near the Jersey Shore, which is both a wonderful pro, and there's obviously live music out there too, which is really fun. We have the South Mountain Reservation and also West Orange too. So there's beautiful nature and hikes and waterfalls. So we're really close to getting outside. Maplewood is actually the home of where Frisbee started. So that's kind of a fun, unique, very niche thing that we have. And we also, I'd say something that I love about these towns is really specific holiday activities. So we have 4th of July parades and fireworks, and there's always a lot going on around the holidays. Summer, we have music and performances outside. I know, Brad, I think you've been to Maple Woodstock and maybe one year. Really fun music festival. Pride Festival is often in Maplewood. There's a jazz festival in Montclair. So there's lots of activities that bring the communities together. And I think kind of the outdoor element too is what makes it special.
And I just like to add to that too. I have really close friends that they were in Maplewood for a long while. They just moved very close to there as well. But what I really found unique and fascinating about the area was the community vibe. I mean, I did go to the Maple Woodstock, and the whole thing, the entire town, all of the adults, the grandkids, the kids, they all came down to the central kind of park. And there was music, there was a cotton candy truck, there was an ice cream truck, there was hot dogs, there was fireworks, and kids were running around laughing. The parents brought, picnic baskets and wine. And it was really a really fun vibe. And then when we went back to their house afterwards, up the hill a little bit towards the reserve, the kids just went out the back door and ran down the block and started playing with their best friends who lived 3 houses over. And an hour later, like 16 muddy kids came in the house. And it was really just like, I know it was a little scary, but at the same time, it was just fun to see them, like the kids go out in the backyard and just play with the neighbors and roll around in the mud and come back in. And, it was a really cool community vibe, and I could see why you'd be attracted to it. The other thing I want to touch on too is that Jen said that they have commuting and whatnot. I do remember you saying that they do have daycares that are set up for early drop off and late pickup. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. So we have a lot of the schools and preschools cater for commuters. So they have a kind of 6:30, 7 a.m. drop off and then a late pickup after. I think some of them even go till 7. So for families that if both parents are commuting, that option is there. And I think that does help for a lot of clients that both are commuting still into the city.
Now, a question about community. That's an important thing. A lot of people moving from Brooklyn want to understand how they're going to meet the people, how they're going to get engaged. What can you say about meeting people in your area, the community gathering events?
Yeah, so personally, we met a lot of people through my daughter's preschool. We actually had a really wonderful year that we entered in everybody was very social. And I think now we're coming out the other side of COVID. We're seeing a lot more of people meeting in the kind of the preschool scene, and often too just in the parks, much like in Brooklyn and Manhattan, you hang out the same parks the weekend, you see the same parents, and then these community events. So I've definitely had clients who, they go downtown, they get coffee, they see strollers, someone else kind of kids same age. There's also like SOMA, which is South Orange Maplewood parent groups. We've certainly connected clients too, like they've had kids born same age, and we actually find a lot of our clients in same kind of age group with kids too. So there are quite a few ways other than just school that people meet. I should also add, there are a lot of people that move here without children. I don't know if anyone on the call is here. We've got, someone on our team, actually, her and her husband moved out here. No intention of having kids. They love it. There's a lot to do over and above, being at the playground. We do have a good restaurant scene and antiquing, and, you're really close to lots of other towns too for activities.
One of the things that I noticed too when I was there from speaking with my friends is a lot of creatives move there. A lot of people that are in media move there because the commute from the upper west side of Manhattan, where a lot of the creative industries are located.
Yeah,
it seems to be a really big area for creatives, and also a very more multicultural area than you would expect in many suburban areas.
Yeah, and theatre too. We have a lot of Broadway, which also then feeds into, we have Paper Mill Playhouse and we have SOPAC. So there's a lot of theatre and improv out here as well.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about the housing stock and what's going on in the market out there?
Yes, so we are, good news for the people on the call is right now, typically, and this, not to steal everyone's thunder, this is the kind of the peak season for buying. It is a seller's market. That being said, we will make sure that we put you in a house, and we always take our clients through how to be competitive and what that process looks like. But overall, we are hoping and seeing the inventory should start to rise. There are typically multiple offers on homes though, so being prepped for that is important. Average, do you want me to do sales prices now while we're
Yeah,
on?
sure.
Okay.
That'd be great.
So these are 2022 average sales prices, and I will preface with 2022 and 2021 were pretty frenzied out here because a lot of people made the move from the cities during COVID. But 2022 averages across a few towns, South Orange and Maplewood, you're right in that kind of 860, 870 range. Bloomfield is around 460, West Orange around 580, Montclair really around like the 1112, and Summit around 1.3. So we do have a good kind of spread of town and prices and cross towns that really can cater to most people's price brackets too. I think it's
generally, sorry to interrupt, but what generally in your areas impacts the price? I mean, that's a pretty wide range from about 500 up to 1.1.
Yeah. So walkable to town is a big deal. The closer you are to a town or a train station, definitely impacts price. West Orange does not have a real kind of downtown, like a villagey type South Orange like Montclair does. So that does kind of change the dynamic of who chooses to live there. You also have to get a jitney to a train. They don't have their own train station. Bloomfield, same thing, kind of a smaller community, not a specific, they've got like little pockets of stores, and the housing stock tends to be on the smaller side than those homes you will see in Montclair and Summit. If you're looking for something more new construction, Summit, Short Hills, they tend to offer more of that than towns like Maplewood, South Orange, and Montclair. Montclair has a number of kind of grander, larger homes, bigger lots, which also kind of drives up the prices there, which is, why their average is a little higher.
Got it.
Great.
So you said it's a competitive market right now. You are seeing bidding wars. What can you do to put yourself in a better position to win out on one of these things?
Yeah. So it is, we always say, and I know Brad, you speak to this really well, working with agents who are known in this market and who know what's going on is really important. Also who you work with within that team. My husband calls it your bench. So the mortgage lender that you have, the attorney that you're working with, all the people within your team can help you in a multiple offer situation be seen when we're presenting to a listing agent. Because if they know the team you're working with, the lender you're working with, the attorney you're working with, and they've seen them in action before, they know you're going to get to the closing table. Yeah. The other side of it is there are sometimes some off-market opportunities, they different names, exclusive, pocket listings, etc. I'm actually writing an offer for an off-market Compass listing after this call and showing another one that a builder who we are connected with, I'm showing that on Thursday. So there are some of those opportunities. With it being a seller's market, oftentimes sellers will still choose to go live because the more eyes on the house, the better. But having an agent who is, well connected, and honestly, Compass too has such a great reach and community that is, that really can help our buyers.
So I just want to point out and kind of add on to that for all of the areas that we're here. Jessica and I have over the years curated some of the best agents in those particular areas for the specific reason is, so many of us, when we're starting to explore out in the suburbs, we go on Zillow or Trulia and just kind of play around on the internet. It really, really is important to connect with a local agent. Doing it on your own is it's really, you're not going to win in the multiple bid situation. I purchased a property upstate, and even though I'm a professional real estate agent here in Brooklyn, I made sure that I was represented properly up there because, as Jen said, it is so important to have a holistic team. So in a competitive market, you are on a silver platter to the seller, and you want to make sure that you have an attorney that the seller's broker knows, that they have an inspector, that they have a lender. And in each of the areas, there's some lenders that are going to be a better fit for the house that you're buying. And the agents that we have on this call are the best at what they do, and they will connect you with the best people so that you really are armed with all the tools necessary to make sure you are the top person in this bidding war, if it comes down to that. So what I want to stress here is whether it's Montclair and Ginge, or whether it's Corey and Maya in Westchester, or Alana in Long Island, no question is too small. It's really important you connect with them. We'll send you all of their information after this call so that you can have a one-on-one. And I really encourage you to reach out, have a conversation, and really understand what it's going to take to go from looking around on Zillow and Trulia to making this home actually yours.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Ginge. You provided some great info, and we may bump back to you with some future questions, but why don't we move on to Alana in Long Island and get a little bit of a feel for what it's like to live out there. And Alana, can you give us a little quick intro about how you got there in the first place?
Absolutely. So I actually lived in Brooklyn. I went to Brooklyn Law School, lived in Brooklyn for many years, and then moved to the city and, lived on the Upper East Side for a long time. I'm not going to share how long because I feel like it's going to age me. But had two kids, and then really just was like, it was just way too stressful. I just was like, I'm going to the park and I'm grabbing all these children and I'm always sweating. And I just felt like it was very hard. So I am actually from originally Port Washington, which is where I live now in Long Island. And my husband's from the North Shore of Chicago. And he was like, I'm only living 36 minutes from, he had very strict, and he's like, it has to be pretty and on the water. And I'm like, well, I happen to come from a town that fits that criteria. So you are in luck. And I'm sure I would have convinced him otherwise. But anyway, so the reason that, I came here just because, it was the time in preschool, and I really couldn't handle it with the school situation. In Port Washington, the reasons, and I cover all of Long Island, and Long Island there's many different neighborhoods. And because of the low inventory over the past few years, and also because I'm from here, I actually cover kind of a wide area, most intimately the North Shore, but I also am, heading down to the South Shore now too, because I have more of a team. People come, Port Washington is a big feeder, Port Manhasset, Sea Cliff, and some other North Shore towns are very big feeders for people from Brooklyn. The reasons are commute, schools, and just kind of the community vibe of that's why people, and also the aesthetic beauty. In Port Washington happens to be a very beautiful town. I'm sitting in my room and actually I'm staring at the beautiful snow, and I live near the water. So I got a little water view. We have good sunsets, Ginge. We do. We have really good sunsets. My kids everybody's trained to look for the sunset. We're on the water. We have, then there are other towns that are on the water on the North Shore too. We happen to have very good commute, and I have a big announcement. We have East Side access. So we have West Side access and we have East Side access. So we are, as of yesterday, I think you can go to, I think that's what my husband told me. You can go to Penn Station or you can go to Grand Central. You're going to be going down very deep into the ground because apparently it's very, it's very high up to go to Grand Central, but we have East and West Side access now.
It's a big addition.
It's kind of a big deal. Makes you like me more, maybe, I don't know. But I used to work with a lot of buyers that sometimes that would be an issue for them. So the commute is very good. And in terms of we are very strong community sense here. Tons of fun activities, especially having to do with the water. There's actually a really cool restaurant that you can drive. There's actually a couple of them where you can if you have a boat, you can drive up your boat, and kayaking, paddle boarding in the summer, farmers market, music on the water, ice cream store, watch the sunset, very, very, very nice vibe, a very warm and welcoming community, lots of very active parent groups. There's several, and they're for all, and we have the Buy Nothing groups, and this school group, and this parent group, and this Residents for Beautiful Port Washington, all, you name it, we have it. What else can I tell you about Port Washington?
I grew up on the North Shore of Long Island as well, and so I can really attest to the value of having the sunsets and the access to the water, and to be able to go out there and play in the summer times. It really does impact your quality of life. And so it is a really wonderful aspect, the ice cream on, watching the sunsets at the
Mhm.
beach. It sounds like a dream.
I went
Yes.
to get Long Island, to visit Alana in Long Island, and it was like I was on vacation.
Right.
And,
We
and
have a lot of beaches. There's a bunch of private beaches in some other towns, like Seacliff has its own beach. Glen Had, they have a beach. I was just actually I was close to Huntington. I was in Lloyd Harbor, which is much farther out, but so beautiful. And then I go to Cold Spring Harbor, and it depends on how much you need to commute and what type of vibe you're looking for, because Long Island is kind of a wide swath. But where I live tends to be one of the biggest feeders from Brooklyn.
totally. And like I said, when Jim was on the phone, if anyone's interested in Long Island, pick up the phone or shoot an email over to Alana, and she'll be able to have a conversation with you and kind of guide you based on your price point and also on the vibe that you're seeking of what towns might be right for you. So really having that conversation is going to be a lot more informative than just kind of playing around on the internet. Now, just real quickly I want to touch on the commute. I remember you saying that Port Washington is at the end of the line, so it's a quick commute, but you always
Yes.
get a seat. I remember that part being very cool.
So we have our own train line in Port Washington. The president of the Long Island Railroad in the whatever year it was formed lived in Port Washington. So we have Port Manhasset, Port Manhasset, Plano, Great Neck, and then it does go express. There's some trains that stop in a few, sometimes they stop in Woodside, but we are the end and the beginning. So you get a seat, and if you fall asleep, snooze, and at the end you wake up. Lots of Netflix if you like, you get good Netflix. And people like the commute overall. Everyone that I've moved out here and all the Brooklyn people really enjoy it, and it's kind of like a fun social thing.
Question for you about the market. What are you seeing in the market right now? What are prices like? How are things moving? Is there inventory shortages? What are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, right now we have very low inventory, but it's kind of typical for February. And everyone's really like chomping at the bit, like waiting for houses, but that's kind of like a norm. But it's still a seller's market. I actually just came, that's why I was rushing like a crazy lady. I have a really good listing coming on for $849 this, tomorrow. We do have low inventory, but more stuff is coming. Constantly, and you do need, in these small towns and all these small towns, it's important to be working with someone local, because I am also aware of a lot that's coming on. So I can give people, like I just had a buyer that lost something, but I'm like, oh, it's okay, because the house is coming on 2 doors down tomorrow. So, there's a lot of that goes on, nuances of knowing the market intimately. But right now we have low inventory, but it's going to pick up. I don't think it's going to be crazy. But I'm going to get everybody a house that needs to get a house, because that's my job.
And what are you seeing price-wise?
Price-wise, right now people are, if they're smart, what they're doing is they're not pricing things like crazy, like they did the last 2 years, where things like you would kind of see a house and be like, really, this is the price. Right now they're pricing a little lower with the aim to go higher, but it's not the insanity of COVID. Things are going over if they're priced well, but there are some houses that are sitting that the sellers are not, listening maybe to their advice, or they're not getting good advice. And you can take advantage of that a little bit, those opportunities. But things are going, and, there's stuff coming on anywhere from, right now, like things, I really say starting in like the 7s, you can find things in the 6s. There's a couple of things, but starting in the 7s and then, going all the way up, we go very, very high. In Port Washington, it's kind of an interesting community socioeconomically. There's a very big spread and a very big range, which makes it a wonderful place to live. But that being said, it's a little tight right now in the market, but I'm not afraid.
One question, just one thing I want to share with everybody listening, that if you have specific questions, please just drop them in the chat for us.
Oh yeah, somebody asked about Ginge mentioned, which I wanted to also mention about, we used to have a community program for people who have kids where we had like the before and after care. And now they actually launched in all the schools last month aftercare. So there's like a big movement for helping, people who are commuting or working or whatever you're doing, to help you, to help the kids stay engaged. So you're not like running all over the place, after school. There are programs and like enrichment within the schools now after school, which is really, really nice. So today,
One
yeah.
other comment, I know a lot of people probably have questions about schools if they have kids. So if you do have specific questions about schools, all the people that are our panelists on this call can connect you to families within the school or can connect you to the right people to ask questions. With fair housing laws, they cannot answer specific questions that you have, but you'll hear it even better from families who are in the specific schools or the communities that you are curious about.
Also, we touched on this a little bit earlier about getting yourself prepared so that you can hit the ground running. Everyone who's joining this call right now, you're doing the right thing. You're educating yourself. You're getting the process started. If you're early in the search, the earlier the better, in my opinion. Even if you're not planning to buy for a year or 2 years, it's really helpful to get understanding of what the market looks like now, so that you may have seen the house that might be right for you 2 or 3 different iterations before the time that you're ready to pull the trigger. But in order to know it's the right house, you have to educate yourself now on what pricing is, what locations are like. So you guys are smart by being here. You're educating yourself, and any of these agents on the call, they can set up a search for you, and they can get into that more specifically. But we have a really wonderful platform here at Compass called the Compass Collection, which is a curated search. And it's a really fantastic way to collaborate together with your agent on your search so that you can both learn your criteria, your search, your neighborhood, your community together. And it'll keep you in the loop on what's happening in the market as the weeks and months transpire. So it's a really fantastic way for you to kind of understand what kind of houses you can purchase.
Alana, we just got a question in the chat.
Yeah.
I've seen, so maybe you can touch on that.
So, okay. So the most popular, Port Manhasset, also Roslyn, East Williston, Seacliff is this very cute little town. It's not as commutable. Seacliff Glenhead, in the North Shore School District, very cute. And I would say Garden City, and some people will go far out to Cold Spring Harbor, even far, some people are not, like, it depends on, what their commute is like. If you're going to be commuting a lot, like going much farther is amazing, but it's just not going to be a great commute for you. And then like a few people go into the set, like Rockville Center, Garden City. And then, every once in a while I'll get a Long Beach, which is super cool. And surfing and on the water and just very cool vibe. And then a little bit of like Merrick and all that, but not so much from Brooklyn. More like if you're from there, I feel like you would move there. But that's kind of, and then there's some neighborhoods in between, like Manhasset Hills and Mineola, and there's neighborhoods in between, but those are kind of like the most popular, I would say. And then there's, if you want like sprawling land of Locust Valley, or if you want like Brookville, but you want like big acreage. And there's lots of little, there's some really cool neighborhoods right on the water. Bayville, they're far, but very special. So, but those are kind of like the most popular. I feel like people from Brooklyn necessarily aren't like moving all the way out to Bayville.
I think it's like, this is one of those moments where once you kind of identify what your top 5 key factors are, then you start to narrow down the towns that would be worth exploring. And that's where
Right.
certainly come in and be a guide to say, let's narrow it down to these handful.
Right. I mean, people from Brooklyn, I mean, it tends to be more popular, like not as popular, maybe Syosset and Woodbury, just because that's like a little more in the center and a little like sort of more suburban, less exurban, which was kind of what we call the Port Washington is like kind of like a combination. Port Manhasset has like more of a walkability factor than the people who are moving from Brooklyn want that walkability, which is why those towns are kind of the most popular, because they want to be able to walk to the train, walk to town, which I totally get. I just went away last weekend to Colorado and I didn't have to get in my car, and I was like, this is amazing.
Well, thank you so much, Alana. And we're going to move on now to Maya and Corey, who are in Westchester County. And maybe you guys can give us a bit of an intro about you guys, and talk about the areas of Westchester. I know it's a big place, so maybe give us a sense of the landscape too.
Sure. So I'm Maya Sheehan. I live on the west side of Westchester. So Corey and I kind of split the county in half because it's a very big geography. So I'm more on the west side. Corey is on the east side. I live in the river towns. I'm from the river towns. And I was living actually in Brooklyn and Fort Greene very happily. Before moving to Westchester, I was kicking and screaming, I'm never going to leave. But my husband's from Oklahoma. He's used to big spaces and garages and yards and all of that. And for me, really, it was the schools. You know, my daughter was entering kindergarten. I had two young kids. She was about to enter kindergarten, and the whole lottery, private school stress of everything was just for me the big factor that said, okay, fine, honey, we'll go look up in Westchester. And you know, river towns for me was sort of where I immediately wanted to be. It is sort of what we call the Brooklyn of the North, where we are. You know, everybody wants to come here for the walkability, you know, commute, all of that. So very happy, even though I've left Brooklyn very happily in the river towns now.
So I'm Corey Sassauer. Like Maya said, I'm on the east side of Westchester. I grew up when I was younger in Fort Lee, New Jersey, in an apartment building, and then I moved to New York City when I was in 7th grade. So I had never lived in a house until I moved to Westchester. I only had apartment buildings and compactor rooms. I knew nothing about house living whatsoever. I live in Rybrook. I fell there because a friend from college lived there, and I've never looked back. We've been here now for 17 years. I have 3 kids. My husband also always grew up in an apartment building, so we're very house newbies when we first got here. And we just love the community feel. We love that the restaurants felt like New York restaurants. We felt that both of us were commuting into the city at the time. Commute was really easy for us. We made a lot of great friends on the train. And we just love that each town was different in its own right. But as a community, Westchester was so easy to go from one town to the next, and how different the communities are within the towns. So you can kind of touch on all of that. So we fell in love with that feeling. And we love that you could be, 20 minutes, you could be in horse country, 20 minutes south, you can feel like you're, in an urban New York City vibe. So all of that really worked for us, and we've been really happy in Westchester, for sure.
Yeah, when I think of Westchester, I've visited around both to the river towns and to the east side as well. And it is so diverse, but the one common theme that I think has been kind of underlying in all the towns is access to nature is pretty close in all of them. That's important to you. And also, if you're a foodie, there's great restaurants up there as well. And it does have a little bit more of it's a wonderful mix of a cosmopolitan, metropolitan feel in the center of the towns. But very quickly, when you get out of the towns, you get a lot more access to nature. So I think it's got a great combination of those two things. And obviously, the river towns has one kind of vibe, and the Long Island Sound East Side has another kind of vibe. So that's why we brought agents from both sides to kind of give you the best offering.
So
Yeah,
the
I
river
really think
towns,
there
we got the
is.
comment in the chat. The river towns are the towns that border the Hudson River side, and then you have the Sound side, which is Corey's side, where you have the Long Island Sound towns, and then there's the whole middle strip too.
So Mike, can you tell us just name a couple river towns so that we get a sense, and then Corey, name a couple of your.
Yeah, so on the official river towns is it starts just above Yonkers. It's Hastings, then it's Dobbs Ferry. Ardsley is sort of on the side there, and Irvington and Tarrytown. So those are sort of the main river towns. But then as you go further north, there's also Ossining, Croton. So, the further north you go on Metro North, you have other river towns as well. But sort of what the main river towns that people sort of refer to are those five main that are approximately, I would say, a 30 to a 40-minute train ride from the city.
I do want to point out the train ride from the city is gorgeous. You are along the Hudson River the entire time. And
you took the words out of my mouth.
I have 2 kids, and like I've been on that train before without them, and just sitting there like looking out of the train at the river, like at sunrise in the morning. It's like, whoa, this would be fantastic if I got to do this every day.
Yeah, that's one of the things that the river towns is unique. We have, gorgeous river views from a lot of beautiful homes in the river towns. And we do also, like Alana, have amazing sunsets in the river towns, going over the Hudson. And, I always tell people just in terms of the commute and the train times, it is important to kind of speak to us in terms of your train commute and how important that is. Just because you're going further north doesn't mean you're necessarily going to have a longer train ride, because there are express trains. So if you're up in Croton, it may look like, wow, I'm way out of the city, but there's a 45-minute, express train from Croton. So I always tell people, don't just look at the map and say, okay, I can't go north of this point. You really need to look at train times and express, and we can kind of walk you through that as well.
Yeah, and I
And
also
Corey, what are a couple of towns by you?
Yeah, and I just wanted to, jump in on it. It's also how far you are from the train. So,
Mhm.
some of the towns you could be 3 or 4 minutes from the train. Other ones you could be 15 minutes. So even if that train ride is 30 minutes, if you're 15 minutes, that caps it on. So it's important to kind of talk to the agent about the commute. So I deal with the east side of Westchester mostly is where I work. We're talking about Larchmont, Mamaroneck, Rybrook, and we go all the way north, kind of Chappaqua. So you've got those towns on the east side, you've got the west, then you've kind of got Scarsdale, White Plains, Eastchester, which are kind of more in the middle. And we kind of intersect in the middle for those areas. We're on the Long Island Sound, so we also have these great beaches here. They're definitely different than the Long Island beaches. They're sound beaches, but they're amazing for kids. They've got a lot of events that happen at the beaches as well. And it's just a really nice place, and you get beach pass access. So if you live in any of the towns that have that. For us, we kind of talk a lot about commute and how far north somebody wants to go. Every minute on the train, you get more value on a house for sure, and you get bigger properties. So it really depends. We say, kind of people first start as south as they can, and they slowly go up the train ride till they're north enough they get value, south enough that makes it commutable. And that's kind of how we land in a certain area. So each town has its own vibe, and kind of when we talk to our buyers, we find out what they're looking for. Do they want walkability? Just because you're more north doesn't mean you're not going to get walkability. Each of these towns have a town center, and it depends on where you live. There's sidewalks on the main roads for the most part, and most of the side streets are more like cul-de-sacs.
You can hear that we're in Brooklyn here, which is probably why many of you people are exploring the suburbs right now. But I do want to say that, a lot of these different towns that you're talking about, they have a lot of attributes that sound really appealing. And a lot of people are probably wondering, well, what's the right town for me? And to everyone on the call who's thinking about Westchester, I would strongly suggest you have a call with Maya, a call with Corey. You can tell them a little bit about your needs, your wants, your desires, your budget, and they'll be able to have a collaborative conversation with you. And there's no ego here. We all collaborate without ego. So if you start talking to Maya and it actually sounds like you're going to go towards Corey's direction, we want to make sure you find the best fit for you. And we'll really do everything that we can to hold your hand and point you in that direction. And oftentimes what we find is that people will say, I really want to live in Rye. And as the process unfolds, it really turns out that they're like Terrytown. They're Terrytown all the way. And they didn't know that until they actually explored and understand the options out there for them. So we're going to connect you with Corey, with Maya afterwards. And if you are thinking of Westchester, jump on a call. It's so worth it. They're lovely humans. They're going to help you.
So the other thing is we've been doing this for a long time, and we can also help to figure out, if you tell us, I live in Fort Greene and I love Fort Greene, we could probably figure out which towns would be worth exploring in some other location, because there is definitely
if you live in 41 Eastern Parkway, we know where you're moving.
Yeah. So we can see the feeders of certain neighborhoods. The reasons that you love a certain neighborhood might be the same reasons that you might love another neighborhood outside the city. So, feel free to loop us in, and we can help to learn about who you are and what makes you tick. And that really helps to figure out where your next spot is.
And the other thing too, to add really quickly as well, a lot of people approach their search in the suburbs with the expectation and the framework of living here in Brooklyn. So they'll say walkability is really important to me because they don't want to drive or they're not familiar with that. But once you start making a new life in a new area, the things that are important to you here in Brooklyn may not be as important to you there. So you might actually want more of a yard and to drive 10 minutes than to be able to quote unquote walkable to town. You might say, okay, I was in town 3 times this week. I don't need to go in there again. And after a few months, it doesn't become as important as it is here in Brooklyn. So just letting go of those expectations that your criteria here in Brooklyn have to match perfectly with what's up there, because you're moving for a different quality of life and a different lifestyle. So entering into it with a more open mind, I think, is going to really help you find the home and the community that's going to fit for you quicker.
So back to Westchester. Tell us a little bit about the range of housing prices. Maybe if you can tie it together with kind of commutability, because it sounds like that's how it works in many cases, that'd be great. Maybe, and if you have some specific town names to throw in there, that would be even helpful too.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of like I said, the more north you go, the more value you get. But, values are based off of a few things. It's based off of the size of the house, the rating, the rankings of the school district, and kind of where, how the landscape is. Are you on sewer? Are you on septic, like the municipals? That also kind of plays into the pricing, and also the taxes. So some towns that have higher taxes will have lower price homes, and they kind of try to level the playing field. So from like a Rivertown perspective, you're anywhere from 700,000 on up, essentially, right? You can go, a little bit lower, but I'm talking single family homes, and you're kind of going on up the range, and your price per square foot is probably anywhere from 350 to 500 for new construction, kind of on that side. The median, for example, in Ardsley is 780,000, Dobbs Ferry's 845, and then you've got Hastings, which is 950, and Irvington, which is 1275. So those are the medians for 2022 as far as the prices go. And, in each river town, you're talking about 75 to 100 sales per year, just to give you a sense of how much inventory is sold in a year in those towns. If you go on to the east side of Westchester, the prices very much depend on the school district rankings and how far north you are. So for example, Rye City is actually the most expensive town in Westchester County. The median price is about 2.2 million, and the price per square foot is like 650,000. So that's much higher than the river towns. But then you have something like Rybrook, which is its next door neighbor, and that median price is 985 with a price per square foot of $400. So even though the towns are right next to each other, the same commute factor, there's different things that kind of play into the factor. Rye has very, very low taxes. Rybrooks is a little bit higher. So the higher taxes kind of brings down the purchase price. So kind of what everybody was saying is that when you're interested in looking at a house, we talk about budget, because if your budget's 800,000, I mean, I'm not saying that we wouldn't look in Rye City, but I'll tell you that there'll be 5 or 6 houses that whole year that may come up in your budget, where if you're looking in Rybrook, you'll have 75 houses that come up in your budget. So, and that's okay, but just to know that and get educated and understand the inventory is also important. We love to do town tours. We love to drive our clients around the towns so they can get a sense of what they look like, because every town looks so different. And I think that that's very helpful and kind of puts it into perspective.
Yeah, I think one other thing just on taxes that I always tell people, because people talk about taxes in Westchester quite a bit. The one thing I always tell people, it's really important to work with one of us, because every town in Westchester, and even within certain towns, different areas have different rules in terms of whether or not you're going to be reassessed upon sale, whether or not you're going to be reassessed when you do work on the home, that kind of thing. So, and oftentimes, you look on Zillow, you have no idea, oh, the taxes seem super low. Well, they're going to be 3 times as much after you buy the house. So it's very important to kind of talk to us. Each individual house, not even individual town, has a different sort of tax situation. So definitely make sure that you know what's going on tax-wise in each town.
It really does highlight the necessity of having somebody really walk you through this process, because for so many of us, buying a home is incredibly financially intensive. It's one of the largest purchases to buy, but it's also emotionally intensive. And you need to be guided every step of the way. And like I said, this is the first step. You're coming here, you're educating yourself. The second step is to connect with the agents. And then the third step is to go out there and see these properties. Come on out, go have coffee with Maya, go have coffee with Ginge, go have coffee with Alana, and see what the community is like. They're going to tell you what the best restaurants are. You can walk around with them. They'll give you a map and say, these are the streets you need to walk down to check out. And then you can go out and see some properties as well. And that's really, these are the first steps in your journey to making this idea of a suburban home into a reality.
Yeah, I think one thing we always tell people, it's never too early to start looking. Everyone's like, oh, I don't want to bother you. I'm not quite ready yet. You're not bothering us. We love to see real estate. We love to show houses. It's why we do what we do. And, the more that you see, the more educated you're going to be to pull the trigger when you find the right thing. And the more that we get to know you, the more that we're going to be able to kind of play that matchmaker with you and get to know really where we think that you would, enjoy and what you think you would like best. And as Brad was saying before, we do have off-market listings. If we know you well and we know what you're looking for, we're going to know, oh, hey, I found this off market listing that I think would be great for you. So definitely get out as early and often as you can.
Yeah, and what Brad alluded to before, a lot of times people think they want a certain town or a certain area, and when they come out here, it's very different. So it's good to kind of have a sense of what you want, but to come and see other things is also really helpful.
Can you guys talk a little bit about what the market is like right now?
So the market it's similar to New Jersey and Long Island. We have very low inventory here in Westchester. We are seeing things pick up, which is great, but we have a lot of buyer demand. So we are definitely still seeing bidding wars. People are similar. We're not seeing crazy pricing. When something is priced crazy, it's going to sit a little bit longer. But we are seeing, things going well over asking. There's definitely still best and finals every week, basically. And so, definitely be prepared to craft the best possible offer. And that's where we come in, is really to kind of walk you through the process of, what are the contingencies that you're willing that we can play with, and how can we get, the best possible offer in front of the sellers.
Yeah, and I think it also speaks to coming out and knowing the areas, because it's a very quick process right now. We're talking, 72 hours, 5 days, houses are sitting on the market. So once you know the neighborhoods in the area, then you can feel comfortable falling in love with the house and not then trying to educate yourself on the area and the neighborhood and the street. So it's really important to know that going into it, so you can be as fast as the market is.
And as far as, that's a good question on timing. So here in Brooklyn, people who may own here properties in Brooklyn, they know that it's a little bit longer of a process. It takes about 75 to 90 days to close from once you enter into contract. So that's a very long timeline here. But what is it like to close on a property? Let's say you found your dream property and got an accepted offer next week. How long would it take you to be in that house?
Yeah, so it's about 60 days or a little bit longer. A lot of people here try to time it with schools. So they'll do like end of June. So right now I'm doing a lot of my close dates end of June, just because people want to play out the school year. But a typical is 60 days. Westchester is an on or about county. So you have 30 days to close within the time of the close date, which is different than some of the other counties out there. So you really have that 30-day grace period. But I would say between, first in Westchester, we do inspection and then contract. And then typically it's 60 to 90 days and then we close.
Yeah. And from the time of an accepted offer to when you go in contract, here we want to make that as quick as possible. So, you don't really have anything locked in with the seller, and they don't have anything locked in with you until you sign that contract. So you need to have all your inspections done. Typically, we say within 48 hours of an accepted offer. So, I would say on average, you're getting into contract from accepted offer to contract in a week, at the most.
We say that here too in Brooklyn. The most delicate time in any deal is between the moment you get an accepted offer until when you sign that contract, and you want to minimize the amount of time between those two things, because either party can walk from a deal until that contract is signed. So it's so important to have a holistic team of appraisers and inspectors right there on the ready. I mean, you don't want to be Googling around for an inspector who may not be able to come for a week, where 3 other offers might come in higher while you're waiting for that inspector to come through the house. And I want to touch a little bit about timing too on all of this. So Jessica and I Jessica started Beyond Brooklyn, and one of the reasons that we did this is, yes, it's a wonderful holistic platform for you to educate yourself on what the market is, but it's also an end-to-end platform. So a lot of times agents, when they're looking at a transaction, they're only looking at, oh, you're selling your property, or oh, you're going to buy a property. We really collaborate and are friends with the agents who are on this call, and we make sure to stay in constant communication, so that if you own a property here in Brooklyn and you're trying to time the sale so that you can find the perfect property in the suburbs, whether it be Westchester, Long Island, or New Jersey, we all collaborate together, and we see your move as one transition. And so we really make sure that we work with you. We have constant communication so that you're taken care of and that your move is timed seamlessly. And one of the things that we do to kind of prep you for that is, oftentimes people need to sell here in order to buy there, or we can work out with a rent back situation. There's also a thing called a cash out refinance or a bridge loan that could work. But we have properties here in Brooklyn that the buyers have been looking for quite a while out in the suburbs. And just so that we're completely prepared, we've already gone ahead and taken the photos, done the floor plans, and taken the videos of the apartments, so that the second that they identify the property out in the suburbs, we'll get a call from Jen and say, hey, they have an accepted offer. And we know it, we got our finger over the button to launch it live here publicly so you can minimize the amount of time that you're carrying two properties. And we do that to make sure that you guys are taken care of and that you're heard as well.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, that's where it's really important. There's two aspects that are really important. One, if you own a property in Brooklyn, and you're contemplating the move out of the city, knowing what the value of your property in Brooklyn is crucial, so that if you want to do a bridge loan or a cash out refinance, or even know how much money you have to spend in the suburbs, you need to know what your property is worth here in Brooklyn. So if you're in that position, just let us know. We're happy to give you our assessment of value. And also, like Brad said, that trying to figure out what your end goal is, like, do you need to be somewhere by the time school starts, or what are the aspects that are important to you? And then we craft a plan that works on both ends, so that you are not left homeless and you're not leaving money on the table. We just want to make sure that you guys are fully covered in the whole process, because it's just one move for you, even if it looks like two different moments in terms of buying and selling. What else do we want to share with you guys?
I think that's a really good summary of all the different towns and the panelists that we have here, so you get an introductory flavor of what the different communities might be like, what the commutes, what the housing stock would be. But again, I cannot stress this enough. We're going to be sending out an email afterwards that's going to have everybody's contact information as well as social media. It's really actually helpful to follow on Instagram. All these agents, they post little peeks and previews of what might be coming on. You get a sense of what the communities are like, and it's a really good way to kind of learn what the neighborhoods and the whole area would be like for you. So look out for that email, and then reach out, connect, have a conversation, go up, have coffee. You're really going to learn so much more by connecting with these people one-on-one than you would ever from Zillow or Trulia. You need boots on the ground to help walk you through the process, to help you understand what it's going to be like to buy a home and how to put yourself in the best position. And on the Brooklyn side, if you have any questions in the Brooklyn real estate, Jessica and I are happy to, on a no pressure call, just kind of walk you through what the aspect of Brooklyn looking like, what the market's looking like. We love this stuff. We geek out on it. We love these Zooms, and we've really handpicked wonderful people on this call to make sure that wherever you end, you're going to be taken care of. So thank you guys for joining. Panelists, everyone, Maya, Corey, Ginge, Alana, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you guys.
And look out for an email from us with some follow-up information.
Cool.
Thank you, everybody.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.